You know that feeling, right? The unofficial end of summer,
Oh, yeah.
the sizzle of the grill, maybe one last spontaneous road trip, or, that irresistible draw of the shopping sales.
Definitely feels like the last hurrah.
Exactly. For many of us, Labor Day weekend is synonymous with just pure, unadulterated relaxation. But today, we're taking a deep dive into Labor Day itself, a federal holiday whose origins are, well, far more complex and, frankly, dramatic than just a simple long weekend.
Much more dramatic.
Our mission today is really to unpack its surprising, sometimes pretty brutal history. We'll trace how a day born from fervent worker activism evolved into a national recognition, how we celebrate it now, and even reveal its unexpected connection to some old-school fashion rules.
That fashion part is always fun.
Get ready to rethink those end-of-summer traditions.
Indeed. Labor Day is this ultimate paradox, isn't it? A holiday born from really brutal struggles and the hard-won victories of American workers, now largely synonymous with the unofficial end of summer. This tension between relaxation and activism isn't just some historical footnote. It's woven right into its very fabric, making it a far more complex story than most of us realize. It's a powerful reminder of how much has changed and, well, in some ways, how much kind of remains the same for working people.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Let's rewind to the late 19th century. I mean, this was a period of immense and often really tumultuous change in America.
Absolutely.
We're talking about the height of industrialization, when the very fabric of work and daily life for millions was undergoing this massive transformation. What were the underlying conditions, the societal pressures that led to this urgent, growing call for a day to truly honor workers, to give them a collective voice against those powerful forces of industry?
No, it was a crucible of change, a truly pivotal time. You had people like Pod Vachon, he's an assistant professor at Rutgers, highlighting how workers were rapidly transitioning. They were moving from more sort of artisan-based crafts, where they often had autonomy and skill.
Right, their own shops, maybe.
Exactly. And they were moving into these relentless, often dehumanizing factory jobs. Imagine a stark, almost Dickensian contrast. Workers found their lives shrinking, longer hours, dangerous conditions, really meager pay, often living in company towns with no escape.
Ugh.
Meanwhile, factory owners, as Vachon puts it, saw their quality of life just skyrocket. I mean, building lavish empires, accumulating vast fortunes. This dramatic disparity, this gap between the fortunes of the workers and the owners was, well, it was pretty much a powder keg waiting to ignite. Absolutely key to understanding the widespread unrest and the eventual desperate push for something like Labor Day.
That tension must have been palpable, almost suffocating. So in the midst of this powder keg, we see the very first Labor Day celebration in the U.S. takes place September 5, 1882, right there in New York City.
That's the one.
Can you imagine the scene? Some 10,000 workers, a truly astonishing number for the time, marching through the streets in a massive parade. What kind of impact did a display like that collective power have?
Oh, it was an incredible spectacle, a powerful declaration. 10,000 workers, organized and marching, would have sent a really clear message. This wasn't some, spontaneous street gathering. It was a highly organized effort.
Right.
You had powerful early worker organizations like the Central Labor Union, representing a whole diverse range of trades and crafts across the city, and the Knights of Labor. The Knights, at their peak, were one of the largest and most influential labor unions of the 19th century, pushing for things like an 8-hour day and equal pay.
Big goals.
Huge. The sheer visual impact, the sound of their collective demands, the solidarity it represented. It must have been a profoundly galvanizing moment for the labor movement. It showed both its burgeoning strength and its growing frustration.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, I think. This powerful movement, born from those fervent local celebrations, eventually gains enough momentum to become a federal holiday. We fast forward to 1894, and President Grover Cleveland signs a congressional act officially making Labor Day a federal holiday. Now, on the surface, it seems like a straightforward recognition of American workers. But the timing here is absolutely critical, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely critical.
Because 1884 was far from a peaceful year for labor relations.
Not at all. The timing is everything, and it reveals a deeper, more complex political maneuvering going on, because 1894 was the same year as the infamous Pullman strike.
Wow.
One of the most significant and violent labor disputes in American history. It really highlights how major social holidays can often emerge not just from celebration, but from intense periods of conflict and, frankly, very real attempts at damage control or reconciliation.
Okay, tell us about Pullman.
Right. So the Pullman Palace Car Company, famous for its luxurious railway cars, was this industrial giant. But in 1894, they brutally cut workers' wages, like by as much as 25%.
25%.
Huge cut. And at the same time, they refused to reduce the rent in the company-owned town near Chicago where these workers lived.
Oh, the company town trap.
Exactly. It created this impossible, suffocating situation for families, essentially trapping them in poverty. The workers, many who built those very cars, felt they had no choice but to strike. The dispute escalated dramatically, leading to widespread railway disruptions across the country. And President Cleveland's response, it was incredibly severe. He deployed federal troops.
Federal troops?
Yeah, ostensibly to ensure the delivery of mail, but, effectively to crush the strike. This intervention resulted in the deaths of over 12 striking workers. Vachon documents this. It was brutal.
That's a truly profound insight. It certainly makes you look at the holiday in a whole new light. But this peacemaking gesture from Cleveland coming directly after such brutal suppression, do historians generally view it as like a genuine attempt at reconciliation? Or was it also maybe a strategic political move to appease a volatile workforce and prevent further unrest?
That's precisely the central question, isn't it? And historians, including Vachon, they tend to lean towards the latter.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily a sudden change of heart,
Right.
Establishing Labor Day as a federal holiday in the immediate aftermath of such a violent event is widely seen as a very deliberate, politically calculated move by Cleveland. His way, quote, to make peace with the working class. It was a gesture, perhaps to temper the immense anger, to provide a kind of symbolic olive branch and bridge the deep divide that the strike and its brutal end had created. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes what appears to be a celebratory holiday has a really heavy political and social history behind it, born more out of conflict management than, say, pure recognition.
That shift from brutal conflict to a day of official recognition is quite remarkable. It makes you realize how many layers are beneath our modern traditions. So what does this all mean for how we celebrate today?
Yeah, how does it connect?
When you think of Labor Day now, you probably picture travelers packing airports and highways for those last end-of-summer escapes, right? Or backyard chefs meticulously preparing cookouts for family and friends. It's evolved into this widespread American tradition.
Yeah, it really has.
That barbecue tradition, in particular, feels so deeply American, almost like it's been there forever. But is its connection to Labor Day as simple as just end of summer? Or is there maybe a deeper, perhaps more surprising historical link that makes it such an enduring tradition?
It's a fantastic question. And the barbecue's connection to Labor Day actually predates the official holiday itself.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Robert F. Moss, he's a food writer and culinary historian, points out that barbecuing was already an entrenched tradition in the U.S. even before the labor movements truly kicked off. It was just a natural, communal, and often pretty cost-effective way for large groups to gather, share a meal, and celebrate.
Makes sense.
So it just seamlessly blended with those early Labor Day parades and festivities. It provided a social outlet for workers and their families. Now, while in the 20th century, it certainly shifted more towards those backyard gatherings with friends and family that you mentioned, rather than massive union picnics.
Right, smaller scale.
Massons notes that it still retains that communal sense, that feeling of gathering around the grill, eating together as a shared experience. What's also fascinating is how the awareness of the holiday's activist roots often depends on, local union presence. Vachon mentions this too. For example, in Chicago, the Pullman neighborhood's so central to the holiday's origins, right?
Yeah, where the strike happened.
Exactly. They still robustly hold a parade and festival. Bob Reiter, president of the Chicago Federation of Labor, says it brings in union members and their families from all over the area.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it ensures that living history and the spirit of activism are still very much alive and celebrated in some communities. It hasn't totally disappeared.
That's a great example of how traditions can evolve and adapt, yet still retain threads of their origins, sometimes hidden right there in plain sight. As we trace Labor Day from its origins to today's evolving celebrations, it's impossible to ignore the broader arc of the labor movement itself, the movement that fueled its creation. So when this holiday was first established as federal law in 1894, how were these nascent unions actually perceived by the wider public, by the powers that be? Were they accepted, or were they still fighting a massive uphill battle for legitimacy?
Oh, absolutely fighting an uphill battle, often facing violent opposition. Vachon notes that unions back in 1894 were largely contested. Courts would often rule strikes illegal.
Like with Pullman.
Exactly, which, as we saw, frequently led to violent disputes and federal intervention. The legal and social landscape was incredibly challenging for workers trying to organize. They often faced company blacklists, public suspicion. It was tough.
Really tough.
It wasn't until much later, with the landmark National Labor Relations Act of 1935, often called the Wagner Act, that private sector employees were finally granted the legal right to join unions, bargain collectively, and strike without, fear of being fired or brutally suppressed.
That was huge then.
It wasn't just a piece of legislation, it was a seismic shift.
Yeah.
It fundamentally reshaped the balance of power between labor and capital in America and provided a legal framework that workers had literally bled for over decades. Later into the 20th century, states also began passing legislation to allow unionization in the public sector. Though it's worth noting, even today, not all states permit collective bargaining for public workers. It reveals how uneven the landscape still is across the country.
Still evolving.
Right. And what's particularly fascinating here is Vachon's observation of a recent resurgence. He sees renewed labor organizing, activism, interest, and even public support growing again. He draws this really interesting parallel, suggesting that a lot of millennial and Gen Z folks entering the labor market today are experiencing a period maybe not unlike the labor unrest of the 1880s. He says basically that jobs just don't pay enough for people to achieve the American dream.
Wow, that resonates.
It certainly resonates deeply with the sentiment that fueled the original push for Labor Day. It feels almost like a cyclical challenge, doesn't it?
That connection between the past and present struggles is incredibly powerful. It suggests that the fight for fair labor isn't just some static historical event, but an ongoing conversation. And speaking of intriguing cultural artifacts from the Gilded Age, the very same period that spawned Labor Day itself, there's another curious tradition that emerged. That old adage about not wearing white after Labor Day.
Yes, the fashion police.
But we've all heard it, right? But what does this seemingly trivial rule actually tell us about the broader social and class dynamics at play during the formation of this holiday?
It's one of those cultural quirks that's surprisingly revealing, isn't it? You have people like Christy Kretzinger, a professor at the University of North Texas, and Daniel James Cole from FIT. They connect this rule directly to the Gilded Age.
Same era.
Exactly, the era of immense wealth disparity, new industries, rigid social codes. Back then, wealthy New Yorkers would escape the city's heat and grime for these exclusive, pristine summer resorts like Newport, Rhode Island.
Place life.
And there they'd wear cool, light-colored, often white, frocks made of linen or cotton. It was practical for summer heat, sure, but also a clear marker of leisure and privilege. You weren't working in a factory in white linen.
Good point.
The practical reason for packing them away when they returned to the city, the very same city where Labor Day first marched, remember, was simple. Its streets were often dirt-packed and sooty. White clothes just weren't practical or sustainable for city life after summer.
Makes sense.
But more deeply, it was a social signal. Packing away the white signified the end of the leisurely summer season and the return to the more serious, darker-hued, formal attire of urban autumn and winter, especially for those in positions of power or business. It was a subtle, yet pretty potent class distinction.
So does anyone actually follow it now?
Well, Kretzinger observes that the fashion world is not working that way anymore. She says people think it, say it, but don't abide by it much these days. People happily sport white year-round.
Yeah, I think so too.
However, Cole offers a broader perspective. He sees Labor Day itself as a kind of hinge, a transition point.
A hinge? How so?
It marks the shift from summertime dress and fun to going back to more serious pursuits, like back to school or maybe more formal business dress code. So even if the no white rule is largely ignored, the holiday still functions as this cultural marker for seasonal change in our wardrobes, and maybe our mindset too. It connects us subtly back to those historical social dynamics.
What a journey, right? From the brutal battlegrounds of the Pullman strike and the early, often violent labor movements, to the communal joy of backyard barbecues, and even to the surprisingly symbolic fashion rules of the Gilded Age. What this deep dive really reveals is that Labor Day isn't just a single story. It's a rich, evolving tapestry of American history, struggle, and tradition, all intricately connected.
Absolutely. So much woven together.
So the next time you're enjoying that extra day off, maybe grilling with friends, soaking up the last bits of summer, or hey, maybe even daring to wear white,
go for it.
You'll have a much deeper understanding of the workers, the activists, and even the presidents who shaped this holiday into what it is today. It's a day of rest, yes, but also a powerful echo of progress and persistence.
Definitely. This deep dive really shows us that while a holiday can evolve into this beloved tradition of leisure, Its foundational story often carries these echoes of profound social change. And the ongoing complex conversation about what it means to be a working person in America. It kind of leaves us the thought, doesn't it? How might the current resurgence in labor activism reshape how future generations understand and celebrate Labor Day, maybe bringing us closer to its roots of recognition and struggle than we've been in a while?